Welcome back into A to Z here on Locked On Sports Atlanta, free on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure you search Locked On Sports Atlanta. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at Locked On ATL. Of course, I'm at Mark Zinno. Check out all the shows we got here on the Locked On Network, including A to Z, Hitting Hard with John Chuckery, ATL Day Ones with Jarvis Davis and Tanisha Batiste, as well as our Braves Postcast with Grant McCauley, Locked On Falcons with Aaron Freeman, and Locked On Hawks with Brad Rowland. The entire Locked On Sports Atlanta network is all right here, and we appreciate you guys being a big part of this. And give us a shout. Let us know what you like and what you don't like, and we'd love to hear from everybody out there. All right, a guy that I love to hear from because, well, it spurs on just some fantastic, lovely, educated, right on one side, wrong on the other side debates. It is my good buddy from the locker room on 680 The Fan. It is John Michaels joining us here on A to Z. John, welcome, buddy. Good to see you.
So it's good to see you, Mark. You're looking good shape. Got the hair done well. Looking
good.
Good.
It's been a while since we've actually seen each other, so I'm glad I'm keeping up my appearance, to a level that makes me respectable. I don't have much else in our community other than my dashing good looks. So you've got more going for you than I do.
Not by much. And tomorrow you love it. Brian Finneran's got me playing adult league baseball, so I cannot wait. I have not swung pitching like real.
Oh, you guys got a game tomorrow?
Got to come through.
Maybe I will. It might be on the schedule. I'll just I'll show up in uniform, see if he wants to put me in the game.
I need you.
Yeah. All right. Speaking of needs, that describes the Atlanta Falcons. We've dissected the draft from every angle, but just sort of a broad view. How do you feel that they did, and what did you like best and what did you like least?
I ended up giving them a B-. What I like best is you do the holes. Now, can these guys, and we'll find out. It's obviously a wait and see a lot of times. It may be 2, 3, 5 years down the road if a guy can play. The biggest issue I had, and maybe it's just PTSD from Thomas Dimitroff in the era that they had. Too many guys from Montana State and Western Kentucky. When I see SEC guys dominating the draft and the Falcons wait till the 6th round, Justin Schaefer, and then they take John Fitzpatrick, the tight end from Georgia, that bothers me a little bit. I wasn't overly enamored with Drake London. I thought wide receiver was absolutely in need. My two guys that I love were the two Ohio State guys, Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave, to me, that were the two most NFL-ready guys. I know Drake London's a bigger body, but I wanted somebody with some suddenness and some burst. I do like that they ultimately went out and they were able to take care of needs. We'll just see how it works out from that point.
Yeah, again, I just thought wide receiver was completely unnecessary when you only have 40% of your offensive line fixed, no running game, and a quarterback who can't necessarily get him the ball. So wide receiver for me, or a pass catcher 2 years in a row, was a little bit problematic from the process standpoint. And that's kind of my only real thing. There is a right way and a wrong way to rebuild. There is there's a trending way to do it the right way and a trending way to do it the wrong way. And drafting pass catchers first is trending in the wrong way. You need to get the quarterback position solidified. That is absolutely step A1 in a rebuild. And then you need to get better in the trenches. Look, the 4 most important positions, right? Quarterback, left tackle, pass rusher, and cornerback. Mm-hmm. So if you weren't taking one of those 4 with your first pick, to me, I question really what the process is.
And I wonder how it would have played out if some of the guys did not fall or get, you talk about the 2 corners going at 4, 3 and 4, Wingler and Sauce Gardner. If one of those guys is sitting there, do you draft one? If a Kayvon Thibodeau or one of the pass rushers had fallen, do you draft one? Because we had talked, sort of the dilemma was when you got to number 8, do you 4th best pass rusher in Jermaine Johnson? And he obviously falls into the 20s, so a lot of teams weren't enamored with him. Do you take the 4th or 5th best offensive lineman, or maybe it was a 3rd in Charles Cross? Yeah. Or do you take on their board what is the pass catcher? And they had the worst receiving core going into the draft. I mean, when it's Olamide Zaccheaus and Frank Darby and Auden Tate and some of the other guys, Cardero, they needed guys. But I agree with you. And we spent many times on many outlets realizing that this team loves shiny toys and they never wanted to draft the guys that were down and dirty. I would have much rather them taken Jordan Davis, although I think he would have been a reach at number 8. He would have filled a bigger need than would Drake London.
No, I agree. Again, at this point, we're always going to put this in the context of, what does Jermaine Johnson do versus Arnold Ebiketie, or even to a certain extent, Drake London, because the guy that's essentially the pass rusher you left on the board. And even George Karlaftis or anybody else who was there that you could argue might have a good career that you passed over as far as pass rushers is concerned. That's the second guessing that'll happen. We obviously won't have answers for that until a couple of years down the road. But I certainly understand sort of the logic in second guessing it. You could argue, though, they could have done what the Ravens did and take the best safety on the board in Kyle Hamilton, which wouldn't have bothered me. People would have felt like that would have been a reach. But again, you got the absolute very best safety in this draft.
Well, and the thing when you go with Drake London, it's an easy compare and contrast when Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, and Jamison Williams go I think it was 4 out of 5 that receivers end up getting picked. So you're going to have the compare and contrast there. I just thought defensively you needed help. And obviously the offensive line, you talk about 2 out of 5. Chris Lindstrom, they pick up the 5th-year option, rightly so. He is a Pro Bowler in the making, if he's not already one. They declined it on Caleb McGarry, which lets you know they don't really like Caleb McGarry as your long-term solution at right tackle. Matt Hennessy, Drew Dahlman, the fact that you were rotating centers in the NFL is an indictment on who those two guys are. And then Jalen Mayfield, I mean, we saw what he was a year ago. He'd have 2 or 3 good snaps, and then he'd have 10 bad. So I would not have been mad to go anywhere. I hated that Evan Neal went the pick directly before them because, again, I think if he falls, you potentially take Evan Neal. He's your starting guard today. He's your right tackle next year, and you have problem solved.
Yeah, I mean, again, there's a lot of different ways you could slice this, but I still can't 100% be on board with a wide receiver in the first, just given where this team is. However, once they did take Drake London, I was adamant about them grabbing a quarterback. Why? Because at least put the guy who's going to be throwing him passes for the next 4 years on the same roster so they could start to work together, because it makes no sense for him to be here for 2 years, change quarterbacks, and then bring in somebody new. And by the time you really got a gauge of what he is, it's time to pick up his 5th-year option. You don't know what he is.
Right.
So to me, it was super important for them to go get the quarterback. They get Desmond Ridder, not the guy I wanted. I personally was a fan of Corral, thought he would have been better, but different conversation. So what did you think of the Desmond Ridder pick, and are you on board with it?
In the 3rd round, I was fine with it. I would have personally rather had Malik Willis at that point because you had a guy that was, a previous top 10 grade, at least by some of the mock drafts. And this is also why you could take mock drafts, crumble them up, throw them in the trash, because guys are guessing just like we are. I would have rather had Willis. Ritter gets knocked, I think, because the last time we saw Desmond Ridder was against Alabama in the college football playoff semifinals. His team was overmatched, and I thought there were times that he looked completely off base with that game. I like, he's going to into Arthur Smith's system. He can move around. He is pretty accurate with the football. Probably won't have to start this year, at least initially, until Marcus Mariota inevitably gets hurt, which is normally what happens with him, and then you'll get a chance. I'm going to say something that might be controversial. They're going to take a quarterback in the 1st round next year. So I don't think Desmond Ridder, by any chance, is your long-term solution. Likely to pick in the top 3 or 4. You're talking about Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud, Tyler Van Dyke, 3 quarterbacks, and Van Dyke might be lower in the 1st round, but you're talking about 3 guys that could be franchise starters immediately. Throw in Phil Jurkovec out of Boston College. I know he's getting a lot of love. Spencer Rattler, if he can bounce back. I think Ritter is more to alleviate Felipe Franks on the roster and give you some insurance a couple of years from now.
Notice how you slipped that Tyler Van Dyke Miami guy in there. Just
he's a 1st-round grade.
You're paying a little bit of attention. I know who you are. You don't have to sell me. And by the way, I literally just spent the last segment talking about the idea that, yes, you can draft a quarterback next year. Look, I don't know if you saw this from Warren Sharp, but since the 5th-year option has been in the NFL, since 2011, only 57% of 1st-round quarterbacks had their 5th-year option picked up. If you can move off a 1st-round quarterback with all the sort of, noted draft capital that's there, and the reason why you draft these guys for the extra year of control, if almost 50% of the time you don't pick up that 5th-year option, you can easily do it on a 3rd-round quarterback. And I said yesterday, and I've said since the day of the draft that they took him, they have absolutely one job in 2022, and that's to figure out if Desmond Ridder can play. Because if he can't play, then you got to draft another one. But if he can play, now your 1st-round pick next year becomes that much more valuable to you, because you know that you don't have to get a quarterback and you may have solved it. But you got to figure out if he can play.
And by the way, if you're at the top of the draft next year and Ritter can play, there's this guy named Will Anderson who's an absolute homewrecker out of Alabama that you could get into your edge rushing problem. So I agree with you. There was another thing we were this morning. third-round quarterbacks have mostly been irrelevant. I'm trying to remember the one guy that's been a starter, but you're going Mason Rudolph, Garrett Grayson,
Russell Wilson.
Russell Wilson, and I'm talking about just going back 5 years.
Nick Foles was a third rounder. I mean, Kirk Cousins was a fourth rounder, right?
Dak Prescott was a fourth rounder, but more along the lines, it's Sean Mannion, Garrett Grayson, Mason Rudolph. It's guys that are on the fringe of rosters, but they're not there. So Ritter, we hope that he's good. Like, I hope that the Falcons have solved their quarterback woes with Desmond Ridder. But history will show you that it's about 1 out of 10 that you found a starter third round or lower.
All right, let's pivot here real quick to the Atlanta Braves because I am at the point right now where I am just flat out annoyed with the amount of panic that people are spewing in this city about the Atlanta Braves because, they're 7 games behind the Mets right now on May 4th. Oh, my God. What are we going to do? May as well just mail in the rest of the season. Call it quits. We're done. I mean, what is with it? You guys are the Braves flagship. Do you do this every day? Do you sit there and scream panic every day on May 4th about the Braves season? Is that what's going on?
No, I don't scream it, but I damn sure am thinking it. And
stop.
And I know you're a New Yorker, so the Mets will Met at some point. But
how about let's not even say the Mets will Met. How about they just won't play 700 baseball for 2 consecutive months? How about that? Like, let's just start there. Forget blowing the entire division for a second. They will just come back down to, let's just say, 600 ball. And if you start to come up above 500, guess what? You've taken that 7-game thing, and now it's down to 3, 3.5, 4. And you're like, fine, we're coasting towards Memorial Day.
Here's the only issue I have. Cincinnati, as of yesterday, had 3 wins. 2 of them are against the Braves. You lost the series to the Rangers. I mean, you lost the series to the
Rangers because you panicked and moved Max Fried to the Mets series instead of facing him against the Texas Rangers.
I mean, you ended up getting the win against the Mets anyway, which is fine because Max is playing.
It was a wash because you lost when the Mets won on Sunday.
Right. The issue is you're losing to bad baseball. I don't mind losing to the Mets. You know, I don't mind losing a series. I don't know if it's Philly or you lost to the Dodgers. You got to see you split with San Diego. The issue is right now they're not hitting the ball, or it's been very inconsistent. The pitching outside of Fried and was really good. Charlie Morton looks terrible. Now, I get it. A year ago, he started the same way, and then he found something, and then he was really good the rest of the way. But there is a little bit of panic scenario for me. The good thing is we learned a year ago, you can get into August hovering around 500 and go on and win a World Series. So I truly trust in Alex Anthopoulos and crew that they will eventually get things right. I think guys will eventually get hot. Ronald Acuna is sort of going through spring training right now that he didn't get to have with the knee injury. He'll get hot. The team's going to be good. I still think they're going to be a playoff team. But right now they're playing some bad baseball, and you just have to hope that 7 doesn't 13 and you're against an insurmountable lead. You can't lose the division. You can't win the division, in April, but you can lose it, and they're really close to losing it early on.
Yeah, I've heard that adage. I'm just not 100% sure I buy it. I mean, it's just there's so much that's going to happen. You have no idea what injuries are going to fall apart. Right. I don't want him to, but Scherzer could end up on the DL for 2 months. I mean, it's just going to change the entire complexion of this season. One more on the Braves here, and I'll phrase the question this way.
Uh-oh.
And I need you to take your emotion out of it. I need you to be objective here. Do the Braves miss Freddie Freeman?
Yes. I think they do. And it's not necessarily on the field because Matt Olson's playing well.
I know, but where I think they miss him is that runners in scoring position you talked about a moment ago. That's where I think they miss him.
I think there's also some intangibles in the locker room that are missing. Mm-hmm. It's not that Matt Olson's a bad teammate. There was just equity built up with Freddie Freeman, who had been there for a long time. You know, we talked about coming out of spring training where Dansby Swanson and some other people were saying, maybe we should keep a locker for Freddie, which I thought was the most ridiculous thing in a profession. The guy didn't die. Talking about a guy that left via free agency to go somewhere else. You don't keep memorials for Freddie Freeman, but I do think they miss him a little bit. I think that steadying force at number 2 in the lineup with what you talked about with RISP, and then the second part to the locker room, it's a little bit off. You need somebody to fill that void. Ozzie tried over the weekend going off on Marcell Ozuna for not hustling, but you got to find somebody that's going to fill that void when days like right now where they're not playing good ball, they say, look, we still got 140 some left. We'll be fine.
He is John Michaels. Follow him on Twitter at John Michaels. You check him out every morning on The Locker Room on 680 The Fan. You're the best, brother. Love you. Thank you so much for the time today. We'll do it again real soon.
Anytime, Z.
All right. Coming up next, are you a jerk or are you just doing your job? We'll discuss that right here on A to Z on Locked On Sports Atlanta, free on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast. Search Locked On Sports Atlanta.